you can still work with your hands, with earth, with sun and water, and produce food. You do not need a military, industrial, governmental complex to feed you, right? In fact, you're going to be way better off without it. And I've got a lot of resources, but I'm thinking that this would be a great little business to have, to sell livestock during this really rough transition time, which I see as the next couple of years, while we figure out what the true value of silver is, or we figure out the true value of different, where people's values change and they understand what's really valuable and what isn't valuable. I think doctors are going to end up going back to people and doing house calls, or the smart ones will, or maybe if you're a nurse at a hospital and you're involved in that whole system, you still have a lot of really valuable skills. And you don't need a license to sew somebody up if they've chopped their leg, or, we're going to be way past all that licensing nonsense.
And good afternoon, everyone. Marjory Wildcraft with me. Going to talk about backyard growing for protein sources tonight, and just the way the world seems to be moving. We're hearing a lot about the fertilizer shortages. I'm seeing a lot of plastic shortages out here, the naphtha. Also in India, that they have run out of polypropylene bags to pack rice. So there's now a rice disruption, not because there's no rice, it's just the packaging for the rice is disrupting the full supply chain in India to deliver rice. So this is what is starting to happen over here in Asia. And also, just to premise this thing, I watch a lot of silver channels. I like the mining of the silver. I like how they, take it and smelt it and press it into coins and this sort of thing. And, watch some shows on how people value different silver from different eras of time. But regular coin shops, I watch a few of those shows, really try to catch up on what the pricing is thing. But there's one interview show, interesting one, Yankee Stacking. Shout out. You got a pretty good program over there. I like what you do with your shop. Woman comes in and she's like, oh, I want to sell my silver because, I want to have a good time. It's time to go party. Just want to have a good old time. Here's my silver. And I was thinking, wait a minute. And he even asked her, are you sure you want to sell that just to go have a good time and party? And she's like, yeah. Okay, this is the wrong time to sell your silver to go party. And things are looking a little bit squirrely right now, but there's many, many, many opportunities in this. So as we go through tonight's conversation, look at it in an opportunistic fashion of how you can grab these opportunities. There are going to be disruptions, of course, but in that, they're going to have to fix and solve the problem. Hence, there's an opportunity in there to do that. So as we move through the next hour here, please get what you can out, share with others, and leave comments below so we can also see what you're thinking about our conversation. So Marjory, thanks for joining.
These guinea pigs are really a fantastic backyard meat production source, right? And again, I'm not talking about the little ones that little kids get as pets. These are bigger, and they're actually called cavies. And then there's another variety which I could not source anywhere in the United States called kui, which are even bigger. And they are fantastic backyard meat production. They just eat grass, and they don't even need water if you're giving them fresh grass because they get enough liquid from the water. And I'm raising rabbits and these cavies. There's only one guy in all of Puerto Rico, I live in Puerto Rico, that has them, and they are inbred like multi-generations. Like they are inbred to the max. They're all brothers and sisters. So I got some from him about a year ago, and I said, well, let me just experiment with them, see if I like them, see how difficult they are, whatever. And they are the easiest livestock I've ever raised. I mean, they are easier than the rabbits by far, way less disease prone, super hardy. And so I said, okay. And then the ultimate test was a friend of mine's Venezuelan, and he cooked them up, and I'm like, yep, this is good to go, right? It's a dark meat, like a fast twitch, dark muscle meat, which is really delicious. No strong taste like duck or lamb or goat can have, right? Just a really nice meat. And so anyway, I'm like, okay, I think this is worth whatever time and investment it's going to take to be able to build a herd like this here with the proper genetic diversity. And I'm looking all over the mainland U.S. to get these guys, and they're really hard to find. And anyway, I found the best place. And then the other thing is I talked to the owners, and most of the people there, the vast majority of them, these are pets or show animals. And so I said, hey, I'm wanting to get some cavies. And they're saying, what are you going to do with them? I'm going to breed them for backyard meat production. And then it's like, click.
Wall Street doesn't lose money on sell-offs, you do. They create the panic, wait for you to dump your position out of fear, and scoop it up at a discount. The big banks aren't selling their gold, they're buying yours. Right there waiting with open hands. That's why I tell people talk to Noble Gold Investments. They'll help you build a long-term plan and, more importantly, help you stick to it when the noise gets loud. The minor ups and downs, that's weather. The long-term trend, that's climate. And the climate's been favoring gold for 5,000 years. So the next time you see a dip and feel that knot in your stomach, ask yourself one question. Am I making the decision, or is Wall Street making it for me? Don't let them shake you out of the position you built to protect yourself. That's exactly what they want. And right now, all new qualified accounts receive a free 10th ounce American Gold Eagle as a thank you. A real gold in your hands, that's the whole point. Visit 2030gold.com and discover how easy it is to protect your financial future. That's 2030gold.com. Click on that link in the description box below.
I've gotten kicked off of Facebook groups, like, forget it. Nope. And so finally I found some breeders who go, yeah, they're delicious. And the big cavie convention in the United States was just last weekend in Longview, Texas. And so I go to Longview, Texas. I'm at the cavie convention, which was this astonishingly small gathering with all these cavies. And I would say 80%, maybe 90% of the people there are also like, these are pets, these are show animals, and we would never think of eating them. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I understand, they're adorable and they're cute and all that, but I know, it's just, to me, it was represented. The other thing that was like, I think I was the only person under 200 pounds in that entire conference. So I know there's just this difference, what's going on. Like there's this separation of humanity, of those, there are those that see what's going on, that are preparing and that are getting ready and that are moving. And then there's the rest of them. And it's sometimes really hard to like interact with the rest of the world because they're just so clueless. So that story you talked about, the girl just selling her silver to go party. Yeah, it's crazy.
Hey, Marjorie, let me ask you, how do you spell the name of that animal? And then I'm just curious, like, what's the fat content? Because, you said you never thought about eating it, but I wouldn't have thought about eating it until I found some focaccia bread, and then I'd be thinking about eating it as a sandwich. So I was just curious what the fat content is and any kind of flavor profile that might be similar with another animal. Because, eating alligator or something, they say, oh, it tastes very much like chicken. So, I mean, can you fill those two blanks in and spell that for me, or spell it for us? Because I'm also interested.
I would say the closest meat it looks like is pork, but it doesn't really have a pork flavor. It's really just kind of a bland meat. And the main reason I'm doing this, well, first of all, that in the United States, the cattle herd is lower than it's been in 70 years, despite our population having like more than doubled in that time frame. So, if you haven't already been pinched by the price of beef, buckle up. And then there's that whole, global agenda to stop eating meat, which is the insanity upon insanity that we live in. I don't know what their fat content is, and they tend to be small. I raise my rabbits and these small animals, and I let them get a lot bigger than would normally be. Like rabbits, the optimal meat to carcass ratio, time frame for commercial rabbitry, it's a feed, because the feed is the expense in any kind of chicken or commercial rabbitry, right? It's the feed is the number one expense. And so they're looking at the perfect ratio of how much feed have we put into them, how much weight have they gained, and if we put more feed into them, they don't gain that much more weight. And that's normally at like 10 to 12 weeks. But I always let, almost 3 months, but I always let mine go a lot longer because my feed is mostly stuff that I'm growing for them. So I don't necessarily have a feed bill, and I want them to get fat because that fat is so valuable. Fat is the most difficult macronutrient to produce in your backyard. Actually, in any farming operation, it's number one is fat. So if you want to know what to fill your freezer with, don't fill it with vegetables. Fill it with fat. So I'm gathering like butter and coconut cream and things like that. And then the other most difficult macronutrient is protein. Carbohydrates are pretty easy to grow, and then fiber everywhere. You can forage fiber all day long and get plenty of fiber. So I'm actually looking at this not only for my own meat source, but as a small business. I think we're clearly the dollar is collapsing, right? And there's talk of about a gold-backed currency, and I think they're going to try and pull the wool over us and say, yeah, we got a dollar now that's backed by gold, and it's all in Fort Knox. And like, if I could take that dollar and go to a bank window and get gold for it, then it's gold backed. But if you're just going to tell me it's gold backed, it's the same as that other stuff you've been passing around. So, but we're going to be in this transition, and if nothing else, we're going to have hyperinflation, we're going to have scarcity, and so, and I, I've got a lot of resources, but I'm thinking that this would be a great little business to have to sell livestock during this really rough transition time, which I see as the next couple of years, while we figure out what the true value of silver is, or we figure out the true value of different, where people's values change and they understand what's really valuable and what isn't valuable. So, yeah, I'm looking at, and I think it's going to be a fantastic little business. They're super easy to grow, and like, why not?
Yeah, I'm going to go the opposite with you. I'm saying this is going to be the most abundant transition time for those who are ready. Coming out from the scarcity, I just look at it as different opportunity to start different businesses to fulfill people's needs, and the most plentiful amount of that opportunity ever in human history. So you might, people look at it in one certain way, but for me, I'm looking at an optimal frame of, damn, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to change. So that's the most opportunity ever in human history, with all those changes that other people are going to need to change with that. You can offer a solution for that change and be right in the middle of it. And like, wow.
I totally agree
Right
with
there. So big, and, again, embrace the changes, because if you're going to try to fight the changes going through this whole thing, you're never going to win. You need to just roll with the change. Every time something new comes, you're going to need to adapt to it. And don't even ask a question like, why isn't it like that, man? Well, the store used to be open all the time, and now it's only open on Thursdays. Okay, bro, pivot to your life revolves around Thursday to get the most that you can out of a Thursday and all the food deliveries around somewhere. Quit complaining about what was. You're here now. It exists like this now. You're going to need to operate in this new paradigm or environment or set of circumstances. Bend the hologram in this now and deal with it. Because if you can't pivot, you're not going to make it. The people who can transition the fastest and the easiest without that whole getting stuck from last week or last year are going to win. Those who can pivot on a daily or an hourly, because you mentioned hyperinflation. I want to go back to Weimar, Germany, for example. Like in the beginning, and it relates to what I'm seeing out here in Taiwan, they're repricing food and fish by the week now, because
Oh
the
my
diesel
goodness.
prices, yeah, the diesel prices are causing like fish inflation to go. And there's a certain kind of fish called milkfish. And again, it's really well received and wanted because it has a real fatty layer on the inside of where the stomach is after you cut up into that.
Mm-hmm.
The wild ones have a higher fat content than the farm raised ones. But the farm
Interesting.
raised ones also cost more because the feed just went up. So even to raise them in a farm environment, even though you're paying no diesel, the diesel prices to get the fish out there. So these guys are trolling closer into shore. They're not even going far out anymore. It's just not, again, that cost ratio there of like, do I need to spend an extra $5,000 in fuel to go in and get an extra fish that's 2 inches longer and maybe our nets are going to be empty? They're not. So since I've been here, the fish at 50 NT per pound, which is 30, let's say 30 NT to $1, and it was 50, it went 50, 60, 70, 80, and they're going to reprice again this Friday.
Wow. So it's almost doubled in a couple of weeks.
In a month.
In a month. Wow. Yeah. Well, that's
We were
what
just
I
talking about that, and I was like, yeah, we got here like 3.5 weeks ago, and that's
yeah.
crazy that everything is going up. And prior to that, I'd interviewed some fishermen, and we went down there and talked to wholesalers. They're telling us before we even arrived that the prices had gone up, not 10 NT per month, but it was like 3, 5, 7, 10, and now they kind of just rounded to the 10 and move forward. The reason I tell you this is the same thing that happened in Weimar Republic. Like, people stopped believing in the money, so they went to spend it every day. And they found these giant spikes in economic activity on a certain day when everybody got paid. Like, they unloaded all their cash in a single day and like stripped the stores. So people started to notice that if they got too late into the store, they couldn't even unload their cash that was going to be worth way less the next day. So the shortages were, I don't know which was first, the chicken or the egg, like everybody running to spend all their money. But then it became from a weekly into a daily and then into an hourly. So if you got paid, they were paying people by the hour to go work. And then we just saw the hamburger actually eclipse a US dollar for minimum wage. A pound of hamburger now costs more than the average US minimum wage in America. So that Bible verse, you're going to work for a whole day, a day's wage for a loaf of bread. We're already at an hour for a pound of ground beef. And the steak price I just saw, if I might follow up on your thing there, $12.75 for steaks, all-time record high, wholesale basis steak price. So it's here now. But look for the opportunity. Don't look at it and get stuck into fear and like, oh, it's changing. I'm going to get stuck. I don't know what to do. Look for the opportunity and you will find it, guaranteed.
Yeah, like
long-winded,
cavies.
but back to
Or
you.
rabbits. Yeah, cavies or rabbits or meat is a no-brainer, and you can grow these guys. And rabbits, you can grow the diet for rabbits. If you think about it, rabbits live on every crevice on this, even in the Arctic, there are rabbits. So there are ways to feed rabbits. Now you have to do a little extra work, but you do not want to be people go, oh, we'll all be eating chicken. I got chickens. I'm like, no, you will not be eating chickens for meat. Chickens require so much grain. Now you might have some chickens, a few for laying laying for eggs. That makes a lot of sense because extra scraps and stuff. But those meat birds, they're eating grain primarily to raise meat birds. Like to raise a meat bird takes a lot of input. You're not going to be spending money on chicken feed. And the feeds, when the grocery stores close and the grocery stores get exponential, the feed stores close and the feed stores get exponential. It's not like you're going to be able to do that. And going back to Weimar, Germany, it's so hard to comprehend. But in January of 1922, a dozen eggs was about 3 marks. And people were grumbling because the price of eggs had doubled in like the last year or two, right? By October of that year, it was 10 billion marks. 10 billion. And this is like, they don't have smartphones. This is not like internet. This is 1922. I don't think even radio was around very much back then, It happens that fast. Yeah, and I really want to encourage people to start doing backyard food production because like the seed industry, chickens, rabbits, the basic creatures and basic livestock and the basic genetics that you need to get started, it's a small margin. Like there's not that many people doing it, so the demand can completely. 2020, you couldn't buy a laying hen anywhere, right? It was crazy. Like people gobbled it up. Seed companies went out of business because people bought out all the seeds and they had no other stock left, right? So this kind of stuff happens really, really quick, and I believe it. I think we can see it, that we are on the cusp, and we've been slowly increasing, ratcheting up. But if you position yourself now, I totally agree with you. Here's another business that I'm looking at creating. We had a guy here, his name is Josh Kearns, and he's also on Substack if you want to see his work. And he's like totally been into water filtration. And he is like an expert on how to make, we're calling it a better than Berkey, a home water filter system. And you'll need sand and gravel and then biochar, but it's not the biochar like all the WEF stuff is making, but it's very, it's like you can source everything locally and make these. And I'm like, wow, water filtration is so you can get this like one of these 10-gallon stainless steel milk jugs or just a couple of 5-gallon buckets, right? And fill it with this sand, gravel, and then the biochar. And he was saying, yeah, well, you could put, like 20 gallons a day through that, and the filter would probably be good for about a year. I'm like, that's definitely better than Berkey. And we can build them for one set of cartridges for a Berkey replacement is $400 now. So, I'm like, that's an incredible opportunity. So I totally want to set that business up of making water filters, because you're going to need water filters. I did an interview with, what is that guy's name? He was in Argentina during the Argentinian collapse. His name will come to me in a minute. But he was telling me a story, and he lived through the collapse. And he was like, you don't even notice it when you're living in it. But then all of a sudden you wake up and you realize, oh my God, the park is full of a homeless camp. I have to circle my house 3 times before I go in because I want to make sure nobody's following me and is going to mug me. Like it changed. He said his brother from Spain came to visit him, and the first thing that happened to his brother is he got really sick. And it's because the municipalities have been, they quit doing maintenance, because that's the first thing that gets axed, right? And during budgets with city governments and things like that. So the water supply was like, they said they were starting to see diseases that you would expect to see in Africa or India there. And this is in Argentina. I mean, Buenos Aires, beautiful city, right? So these are the kind of things that water filtration will be a really, really wonderful business to get into. That's just one of the opportunities that I see. And I agree with you. I think there's going to be a tremendous amount. And I totally agree with you that it's attitude. The number one, I spent a lot of time doing wilderness survival stuff. And the number one thing that would indicate whether you would make it through some sort of experience was your attitude. That's the number one thing of, we're just camping now, or whatever it is. How do you handle a tough situation? You navigate with it. But it's pretty simple to see what's happening, right? It's the food, so just start positioning yourself that way. Do whatever's interest to you. I think some other small businesses that are going to be really super useful is herbalism and medical care. I think doctors are going to end up going back to people and doing house calls, or the smart ones will, or maybe if you're a nurse at a hospital and you're involved in that whole system, you still have a lot of really valuable skills, and you don't need a license to sew somebody up if they've chopped their leg, or, we're going to be way past all that licensing nonsense here pretty soon. I mean, you have very valuable skills. Start stocking up on the stuff you need. Like I'm buying those flat white bed sheets from hotels. You just cut them into strips, and they're the cheapest way to get a whole bunch of bandages really, really fast. Bandages are costing an enormous amount of money. There's all kinds of things, and our society still has so much waste that you can gather that up. Something as simple as, like, I save my bottles and jars from whenever I'm buying something, right? And like why not? You were going to throw out those supplement bottles anyway. Why not keep? They're extremely valuable and extremely useful. So tons and tons of opportunity coming our way.
Yeah, the people, when they're not going to get paid, you have to understand, when people get into this, I wouldn't say unemployment. It's more when the government stops paying them a livable wage, they're just going to stop going to work. We saw a very glimpse of that with TSA. They just didn't go to work. You're not paying me, I'm not going to work. Now there's going to be a few percentages that was disruptive enough of just that small percent. I think they said 5% of all the TSA staff just said, no, we're not going to work. You're not paying us. We're just going to stay home. That 5% was enough to disrupt, where then they didn't have enough backfill. So you got to think, even a 5 or 10% just constant call out rate, that, imagine if that's water filtration, the water treatment plant, the sewage treatment plant. There's really not a lot of people on staff there. So if, let's say there's 10 people working, and if 2 or 3 just continuously say, I'm never coming to work, you're not paying me. I'm going to distill my alcohol so I can give you alcohol to drink that. So if you're going to do the stitches and you don't have any anesthetic, you can drink David's moonshine and then get through that procedure. And, it makes me wonder why suddenly across the United States they're making distilling totally legal for everybody at home. Why? Because they're going to want you not to focus on that. So they're making weed legal and they're making alcohol. Everybody can do it because, you might be able to create your own motor fuels. Because when I was distilling, my buddy, he has a license. They have a distillery, like a proper distillery. So I was learning from him, and we were doing different kind of fruit schnapps and things in addition to the whiskeys they were doing. They were trying a bunch of different things with sugar canes and different fruits. So I was learning a ton about the fruit edge of it. The heads off that, methanols, all that sort of good stuff, cleaning product. As soon as you come in, right, that first jar, like we try to run off 5 gallons at a time. So if you're going to bring in, you're going to get usually like a 5 to 1. So you'll get a whole gallon out of that. If you're going to do 5 gallons, you just get a gallon. But I like to run the heads off. That would be tinctures, because you really want that super strong. So you're running tinctures at the front. And if you want to save a little bit of that, since it's such high proof coming right between when you're getting that runoff off what you don't want with the methanol, and you bring into that first, where you're going to cut on that first head cut there, you might want to save a sliver of that jar to use for rubbing alcohols, because it's incredibly high proof on that, burns blue, like incredible. So you're creating medicines, you're creating something that you use for tinctures, and then you got the actual cleaning products, and then at the same time you have the tradables that have been used through history. So like looking at supply chains down, you're looking at a bed sheet. Most people see a bed sheet. You see medical product out of that. But I'm looking at fruit on an apple tree. I'm thinking schnapps out of that. And all those range of things, just like you saw a range of things out of the bed sheets. Like this is what we're getting at here is like we're coming at it from different angles, but we're seeing different uses for the same thing that's just a raw ingredient. So again, opportunity on the value chain of a XYZ thing. How do you bring that into a higher value product? Because over here, this is in the Philippines. The wholesalers of all this craziness going on, the wholesalers only wanted to give the Filipino farmers like 5 Filipino pesos for a kg, for a kilogram, and the exchange rate today is 60. It hit the all-time record highest ever recorded. So did the won, the Korean won up there. It reached like something like 1,200. And then Indonesia also reached the highest it's ever been. It was like 17,000 to $1. Like all across Asia, they're getting ripped to the most devalued currency they've ever had in recorded history. The Philippines, up in Korea, and Japan also not as high as it's ever been. It was way above 160. They're predicting going to 180. And then in Indonesia hit the record lowest for against the dollar. So you're telling me about 4 nations in Asia are having this currency problem all at the same time, and it's not related to anything? Like, great for us in the U.S. If you want to go travel, it's the cheapest you will ever travel to any of these nations ever. Well, for now, but man, it might get cheaper in the future. But you got to think about how can you position yourself for these changes and take a raw ingredient. Oh, that was the story. Yeah. So in the Philippines, the wholesalers were like, we're not going to pay any more than 5 pesos. And remember, the exchange rate 60, and they just went to all-time record high. Exchange rate 60 for $1. The farmers, they were only giving 5 pesos for a kilogram. That's 2.2 pounds of tomatoes. And the farmers just started destroying everything.
Oh, yeah.
But I was like, wait, well, why don't y'all take that and make it into just get the whole village in on one thing and just make it into a high value product and then resell it back to somebody, whether it's sauces, chili sauces, paste, like tomato paste, refine that shit down, whatever it is. But the farmers were just so angry. They beat a lot of them out of the village, literally, like they were beating the wholesaler. Like, yeah, I'd never come back again, like putting them out of business because they can't get the supply. Now when food gets expensive and these wholesalers come back, they're going to tell them, we didn't beat you bad enough, so you didn't want to come back to the village again. So it's starting to happen. It's starting to happen.
Yeah, here it's mango season. It's starting to happen. And there's so much fruit that just drops all over the place. And a lot of people consider it a hassle. They consider it a pain in the butt because it sits there and it rots. It attracts mice, rats, and all kinds of stuff. And I'm picking up all this fruit all the time. And I'm feeding my rabbits, and I'm feeding my ducks, and I'm feeding myself. And I actually did look at distilling and turning that into moonshine or something like that. Here, there's a pretty active brewing community with the men here. They love it. It's called Pitoro, and they make some of the most amazing moonshines. I'm not a fan of alcohol, but my God, that coffee, Pitoro, oh, it's incredible. But yeah, I'm looking at all these mangoes now, and I'm like, they're next year they're not going to be any mangoes on the ground available for free. I know that.
Oh, do you think really they're going to go that way, where the food availability and the food pricing you get? Because I lived in Hawaii and there was mangoes would fall and people would put them up on their stone walls, just take them for free. There's too many in the yard, just get out. So you think that they're just going to get everything's going to be scarfed up and taken away, scavenged out?
I think so. Yeah, one time I always love riding in Ubers when I'm traveling and talking to Uber drivers, and especially if I've got somebody who's like just recently moved to the United States. And I forget what country, I think it was Venezuela this guy was from, and he was with his Uber money, which is hardly anything, he was supporting like his whole family back in Venezuela. And I said, so what's your mom doing? And he goes, oh, it's the saddest thing. She had 3 big mango trees in her front yard, and she cut 3 of them down a few years ago to put flower beds in. He says, she so regrets that. Like, so every mango that comes off of those 3 mango trees that she has left is a food source. It's a trade item. They dry it, like that's her income are these 3 mango trees that used to be a huge problem, and she hated them, and she wanted to put, vegetable gardens in, or I'm sorry, flower gardens in. Right. So, and a lot of people here, I used to, whenever I go traveling, I often do a bit of foraging, and I love, I'm often in Central Texas in the fall for whatever reason. Going out for my morning run, I'll take a foraging bag with me. And I'll never forget, I went to this one house, this woman had a live oak tree, and she had one of these nice concrete driveways that was sloped that a little bit and kind of came down to the street that way. And I was like, oh my God, it was the perfect acorn collection thing, right? Like acorns would hit that driveway and then roll down to the bottom, and all I had to do was just scoop them up. So, it was like 6:30 in the morning, and I stopped my run, and I'm scooping up this bag full of acorns, and the woman comes out to the front door, and she's like this, and I thought, oh my God, she's mad I'm taking her acorns, and this is her food, and she goes, what are you doing? She got that Texas accent. I said, I'm just gathering acorns. Is that okay? And she goes, you want those things? You get rid of all of them. She was like, it was a nuisance to her. I'm like, this is an incredible food. So, acorns are one of the easiest wild foods. First of all, there's no poisonous lookalikes. Everybody knows what an acorn looks like. They're super easy to gather, and they're super easy to process. And again, it's another really high quality fat and protein food source. So, yeah, people see all this stuff now as a nuisance. Like, oh, I don't want that mulberry tree. It's like drops its fruit on my driveway and it makes my driveway a mess. Like that attitude is going to completely change. They're going to be putting a net under there and catching every single one of those mulberries or picking them all or something. It's traditional that you put a mulberry tree right next to the chicken coop. That way you like automatically just feed the chickens when the mulberries drop in, right? There's so many systems that you can put in place, and when you start growing food, it's so abundant. Right now, I am totally overrun with ducks. I really wanted eggs, but for whatever reason, the situation right now, I've got ducks everywhere. It's incredible the prolific.
Don't duck around.
Don't duck. Oh my God, and they shit everywhere. The fertility I'm creating, it's a rental, and I got to get out of here. I'm trying to rent a place with some acreage where I could really do some production, but when you start growing food and you start getting into this, there's just such an incredible abundance. You start working with it. It's pretty amazing.
Gosh, there's no more. You can't eat it all yourself. Again, like once you take it up to you getting in production up and running, whatever it is, whether it's fruit or whether it's meat or whether it's some kind of veggies or whatnot, or medicinal flowers or you're distilling or whatever. You're going to have a way to get rid of more of that because it's so productive and nature is so bountiful. If you're really wired in and you're starting to produce, there's way more than you could ever consume or give away to you and your neighbors and consume. You're going to have even extra. So then at that point, you're really going to have to kind of suss out, like, where can you trade that for something else? Where can you sell it to? That somebody would buy it and trade you something in for it in terms of cash or, metals or something.
Yeah. I think that's a whole nother business.
That's a whole nother business. Yeah. Arranging those people who grow and they'll be the middle person.
Yeah. Setting up thrift shops, setting up flea markets. We've got a deal here. It's called Open Food Network is the software. Like people have built all this software, and like on Saturday it opens online and you can pick, like farmers will put what they have and you can say, okay, I want some cheese. I want this chicken. I want this, these roots or whatever. And you put them in your basket, you pay for them. And then on Wednesday, actually after this evening, we all meet at 6:00 at the park, and you go pick it up, right? Setting that kind of thing up, or I think flea markets and thrift shops and that kind of thing are going to come back with a vengeance, because we're going to need to recycle and reuse, and because it's going to be hard to get stuff. It's hard to believe that.
Or it'll be easy to get stuff if you're the middle person or if you're the one with the software trying to procure and arrange all these meetings. Now, you framed it in a different way. It's going to be hard to get stuff. I don't believe that in a minute, because if you're in the middle of that business, bringing seller and producer into the buyer, you're going to be abundantly in the middle and never lack or want for anything. Again, it's all about where you're going to position yourself in these changes. If you're on the periphery of those, then I could see that. But if you're square in the middle and using it as a business opportunity to connect those things, then you'll never, like farmers during the Great Depression, they did quite well unless they had their farms confiscated through the banks. But otherwise, if they had a functional farm that wasn't taken by the bank, they were in the driver's seat. They had food and oil wells.
Yeah. A whole nother business is, and I saw this when I was very young in the 70s. And then also in 2008, becoming a gold and silver and precious metals dealer. people are going to, that is what's going to start trading a lot more. I know a lot of people, I'm like, buy silver. And they're like, what do I do with it? I'm like, just hold on. There'll be plenty of ways to, it's money. First of all, you'll be able to buy and sell stuff. But there were all kinds of little mom and pop things. We buy gold, we buy silver. And, apparently it's not too hard to learn the skills of like, is that plate? Is that real? They got all kinds of fantastic testing stuff now to know, like, is this legit? And then there's always a middleman in the middle there. I buy it from you for a few percent lower than whatever, and then I sell it for a few percent more or whatever. I mean, there's a whole nother business that is going to crop up of people doing that. So I think there's also, we've got this whole AI thing. We've got all kinds of new technology. I mean, who'd have thought 15 years ago that you could make a living by making videos on YouTube? Like, YouTube just didn't exist. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that's going to come, or that is already coming, that you can find a niche for. So
do you think they'll let me use my? Do you think they'll let me use my central bank issued stable coin to go to a farmer's market and be able to have you bring that in on a wallet? Or do you think they would freeze your asset? Do you think you freeze your stable coins after you got like? Because people are going to have an idea to be able to go out to farmers markets if they have a stable coin and you're able to get their stable coins in on your wallet, even though they're government issued stable coins. How long do you think that would really last for the government to start cutting that off?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why I think that's why you want to have precious metals. They want to have, like, even something as simple as nickels, right? The U.S. nickel, 75% copper, 25% nickel. It costs the U.S. government right now about 10 cents to make one with just the materials. And I've seen it go as high as 20 cents. Copper is about to make a big run right now. So I'm going to the bank this afternoon, and I give them
$100 worth of. Do you get a $100 box of nickels?
I give them 5 $20 bills, and they give me, 50 rolls of nickels, and it's heavy. It's like 25 pounds, right? And I'm kind of limping out of the bank, and I'm always feeling sort of stupid. But I give them $100 and they give me $200 worth of value, right? And nickels are like the last honest currency that the U.S. government makes. These nickels now are like what silver, dimes, and quarters used to be back in 1965 or so. I think the other thing about change is in hyperinflation. I learned this from Lynette Zhang. I know you guys have done some stuff together, but
yeah, I know Lynette. We've done a few talks before.
In hyperinflation, typically governments will come up with 3 solutions that almost everybody rejects. A lot of times what they do is try to revalue the currency. So things get more and more expensive, and they say, okay, we're going to shut everything down for a minute, and we're going to revalue. And what 1,000 of the old dollars is now going to be one new dollar, right? And so overnight, your bank account, if you had $10,000 in savings there or whatever, now it's just 10 of the new dollars, right? And pricing, and everybody changes and adapts, and that often works for a minute, not very long, because then the hyperinflation just continues on. But they can't revalue the change, and so like that nickel, which was 5 cents before, it's 5 cents now, but it actually basically just moved up. I mean, the change stays the same value. So that's one very super simple tip. First of all, you should be buying stuff in cash, right? We really need to maintain that as a viable option to be able to transact with each other directly and privately. And when I go, I don't drink a lot of coffee. I go to the coffee shop. I get a smoothie. Actually, I try to stay away from coffee. You don't want to see me on coffee. I get my smoothie, and I'll put a $1 bill in the tip jar, and I'll keep the change. And I'm like, someday I'm going to be able to buy more than this smoothie with just this change, right? I think the key thing here is recognizing what is truly valuable. We live in this crazy, crazy time where people have been so pumped up on, false stuff and videos and distractions. They don't really know what's really, really valuable. And for people who can see value, let's see, I have one other thing, ratchet straps. I'll have to pull you one of my ratchets. I'm crazy about ratchet straps. Like, you can go to Home Depot and get a package of 4 ratchet straps, right? And they have this, the nylon webbing and the lock and the hooks for $10. I'm like, how do you possibly even manufacture that, much less ship it from China, then get it distributed through a store for $10 for a package of 4 ratchet straps, which are infinitely useful? Like, you always need to be tying down stuff or securing stuff or whatever. I mean, it's another one of those things like nickels or buckets or all the other stuff that's just extremely valuable. Bed sheets.
There's really a million possible ways to use a ratchet strap. I kid you not.
It's one of the most
There,
useful things, and they're
you got to
so
have at least 8
inexpensive.
of them in a truck. Like, we're always carrying stuff, and you know how many times you ratchet stuff down in the bed of a pickup. Like, in a pinch, you can make a fence out of those things if you need to. I mean, the
Yeah.
amount of pulling power too, like just you and I, even if you and I were going to try to like raise a fence post or pull a post back in, just kind of square something off. I've used ratchet straps many a time, just like, put 2 or 3 of them in different and try to, level things back up and get them in as we were working on the back deck to try to, square it off again thing after we had an accident with a tree. But, square things off. It's just amazing the amount of pull that those things can do. It's so, I mean, leverage is one thing, and I understand fulcrums and that sort of thing, but damn, you can just get so much power out of one of those. There's some things that are going to be more useful than others when things get expensive, because that is going to get cut off, I do believe, because America's messing around with China's oil now. And can I tell you something that's happening here? So I surf the news, and I'm looking at different newscasts. I go to Al Jazeera, and then I'll bounce over to like Bangkok Post, and I'll go up to Korean Times, like string straight Singapore, Singapore Straits Times in Singapore, excuse me. I'll go over to Times in Delhi, and I try to get all the news across these different Asian nations. Just I have them all on bookmarks. So I just click, 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 click. What's on the first page is pretty much what I'm interested in. So what you're being told at home is Trump has allowed 20 ships to go through the straits. Most of those were sanctioned. They were getting out of there. There was no control anyway. And China has absolutely unequivocally said, that is our oil. Those are our trade negotiations with Iran. You're creating high piracy on the high seas, and we are actually going to run through your ships. And if you try to stop our ships, that's a declaration of war. They've already told this publicly over here. I don't know if you're hearing it over on the news over there. And China coming out with the hard fist saying, you disrupt our energy, we're going to war with you immediately. Immediately. Do not do that. And then they left the hands off the Russian or off the Chinese ships. So it's all this, that, and the other. So the first things that would get cut off in that sort of escalation is what? Class? Anybody? Oh, yeah, everything made in China,
I know,
which is
right?
everything. You
It's
don't
just
like,
everything.
they could ruin our country by just really stopping them. But Trump might talk 50% tariff. Okay, what about no goods coming? I don't care whatever tariff it is or not tariff. No goods.
I do not believe those tariffs. I go, because when those 30% tariffs came out, I'm like, I'm looking at the numbers on how much Walmart imports, Home Depot, Amazon. It's all from China. And if you put a 30% increase on the wholesale cost of goods coming in for any business, like, that should have wiped out a whole bunch of businesses, right? And it didn't. And I'm like on Amazon, and prices are still, for all this stuff that's not really food, they're still really low. And I saw a chart, well, actually, when you and Mike Adams were doing your interview, somebody popped up this chart, and like, the amount of imports coming into the United States from China has not dipped one iota. So like it's like
It
this whole
increased.
mirage. Yeah,
It increased.
I was in Mexico in February during the so-called Mexican Civil War, and I was there at Anarchapulco, which is such a fun event. Leaving as they are rolling out this whole Mexican War psyop, and I'm there with a whole bunch of anarchists, and we're in this private Telegram group, and they're posting all kinds of stuff about it. So I was like, so yeah, they did burn cars and they burned some buses. We're pretty sure they brought them in the night before. So it wasn't like randomly they went on the street and burned your car. They brought in cars and buses that they burned. And yeah, they did bomb some Oxxos, right? That's the 7-Eleven type chain in Mexico. They called ahead of time and told them, hey, look, we're going to bomb the place, get out. So nobody was hurt. And then they said, okay, we don't want anybody driving around. So they ran guys with motorcycles tossing out those 4-point pronger things that flatten your tires if you drive on them, which did stop traffic, and it stopped cars and all stuff for about a day while everybody went out and picked that up. But and we had people right there in Guadalajara at the airport, and there's this in the news media, you're seeing some big airplane that's being burnt up, And they're like, nope, that's totally an AI generated image. That's not true. And then the newsreel went on for days and days about how dangerous it was, and they were hunting down Americans or white people, and you know nothing. It was those guys were back at the bars and restaurants within 12 hours. Like, and back, everything was back to normal. But the news thing kept going on for days. With it was a total, like, they turned Mexico into a movie set for a couple of days. It just this amazingly bizarre, like, so reality and fiction is getting getting real hard. Like, what's real? So, like, what you're talking about with the Strait of Hormuz and ships going through, and oh God, I don't even do anything with the DJT anymore. Like, somebody, Sarah Westall, forwarded me one of his texts. She goes, what does this mean? And I'm like, don't read. It's gibberish. It's bullshit. You don't have time for that. You need to be going out and building your chicken coop. Like, don't do anything with that. That's a waste of time.
And speaking of that, I want to continue on that because India, they get almost, like, I think 85% of their plastic, or actually naphtha is what the really big thing is. The imports comes from Middle East. Like, India is having a problem with polypropylene bags, PP bags, which they wrap or they put rice in, because it looks like a woven. You know what kind of bag it is. You look at it real close, and it's really tight woven strips on it. Things hard to tear. I mean, they're super durable. You can throw those things from the top of a building, it just smacks flat on the ground. And these things are like indestructible almost. They're reusable, waterproof if it's tight. But they ran out of the bags, and they haven't been able to get the production up in country to get any more of those PP bags. So they are not able to pack rice right now. And it was the 5 pound, the 2 pound, the 5 pound, the 10 pound, 25 pound, and the 50 pound bags. There's this whole range of different weights that they are unable to pack. They've like run out of the bag. So it's creating this massive thing in India. They went right back over to going, okay, weights and scales again, and then pouring it in a bag and taking it home. But then they were worried about mice and kind of what you're talking about, pests coming in, because when they brought the trucks in, it's all break bark. It's not in bags anymore. You have to do it old school. So the time that the whole thing that they were talking about in the opinion pieces was, okay, the rice is still here. Don't panic. You're just going to have to spend extra time to get it, because they're going to have to dish it out like they did old time. Like, all you mothers and grandmothers remember the old way you did it. You digged it out, you put it on a scale in a bag, and you had to weigh it, and then you paid. It's not like you just go pick up a bag that's pre-weighed and you go in the supermarket, scan it, and pay it, and you're done. This is creating a huge problem in India right now. So get ready for this. Like, you imagine disruption in plastic. What if there's no more plastics? Like, what kind of disruption that would create in America if we didn't have plastics to pack food? As much as something like, saran wrap, cellophane wrap, just for like wrapping the meats and veggies and fruits and stuff, just to put them even in the styrofoam containers, like, that would be to completely disrupt the way we bought food in America. Completely disrupt it.
When I see and hear news like this, is what I think of is the general trend that we're in, and you can just recognize this as the trend and then adapt your life accordingly, is that trade is breaking down everywhere. It's just, and it's, well, I wouldn't say it's breaking down. It's been systemically being taken apart everywhere, right? And there will be that cutoff of Chinese goods to the U.S. at some point in time. And we'll have supply chains breaking everywhere. So the response to that is start getting involved with your local community, start producing your own food, try to get your supply chain as short as physically possible for most of your essential needs in your home, right? And you can do this now. There's still an incredible abundance of this. And I believe afterwards, like, I used to look at my kids and say, what is the future? And my daughter, we had behind the barn, different levels of storage for stuff when you're farming, right? And you got the one small cold room for all the, like, really precious stuff. And then you kind of got the covered barn for the tools and, the workshop area. And then you've got the loose shed for stuff that just needs to be out of the sun and the rain. And then we had what we called the resource pile, which was stuff that was still good, but, it wasn't like go to the landfill, right? And my daughter loved to play in that. And she would make the most amazing stuff out of what, the resource pile. It was like the frame from an old air conditioner, which is like still a nice box, right? Or, some tubing from an irrigation project, and that is what we're going to be doing is we're moving into a recycle, reuse. the wonderful thing about that, I have to say, is the creativity. I'm really looking forward to seeing what people do and how they do it and how they adapt. And I agree, Dave, there's going to be a bunch of people that just bitch and complain and like, oh, if this political thing had happened or whatever, they're still involved in that whole soap opera. But the rest of the people who are getting on with life and going, okay, this is a situation, I think it's going to be really wonderful. There'll be a lot less, right now we have so much government oversight. But, those government employees, when a month's wage doesn't buy you a day's worth of food, they are not going to work anymore. You're not going to have to worry about the health department or the whatever, right? So there's going to be an incredible amount of creativity unleashed from using the existing stuff we have. And I hear you about the plastic bags. Like it's so many people are like, oh my God, I hate plastic and microplastics and the toxicity, and I totally get that. But plastic is an amazing material. I still look in awe at those. I had to buy one, a water bottle that's one of those clear plastic water bottles on this last trip. I very rarely ever buy anything like that, but I mean, it's just so beautiful and lightweight and strong. I'm like, this is an incredible, I actually took it home with me. I didn't throw it out. This is an incredibly useful thing here. And seeing it for the utility it has. So yeah, we're going to have a lot of adapting to do. Adapt 2030, right? We got a lot of changes coming. And I agree. I think during 2020, for me, the whole lockdown thing, I had a really wonderful time, like there wasn't any automobile traffic to deal with. And most of the stuff I wanted to do was still available because the people I hang out with weren't engaged in that whole fear porn experience. And I think we're, what would you say has been, like I was saying with Mexico, we saw a lot of stuff that was clearly AI made up or whatever. And so I've been wondering how much, but some of the infrastructure, especially for fertilizers or the train tracks that access the plants that make the fertilizers, like so much that really has been destroyed though, right? They really are focusing on destroying the food production on the planet. Is that your assessment of what's going on also?
Yeah, because the COVID got us to a certain point, and then they realized that humanity wasn't going to buy everything. They couldn't bring the goals out. It wasn't going to last to the end of the decade. There's too much pushback. A lot of things didn't make sense after a while if you really did a bit of research, but they caught everybody off guard for the first couple of years, and then it really went well for them. But after the last couple of years, there was too much information sharing, and people saw that 2 + 2 equaled like 9, and it didn't make sense. So the goals were not accomplished. But if you do look at this, either Iran cutting off the Strait of Hormuz or Trump cutting off the Strait of Hormuz ends to the same goal. What Greta couldn't do, what the whole EU and their IPCC meetings could not do, Trump and Iran are doing. They're cutting off all the oil. But not only that, but the infrastructure has been destroyed. So that's not even a viable option 3 to 5 years out. Me and Mike talked about this for a minute. Mike Adams, he was saying, oh, dude, some places are destroyed up to 10 years. It's going to take 10 years to get them back online. So generic drug manufacturers, precursor petrochemical companies, as in whatever they're going to put out, helium production facilities, which is a byproduct of natural gas and different products coming off the natural gas production, plastics itself and the fertilizer, finally at the end in the bags, like 60-pound bags ready to load on the ships. Like all that kind of stuff has been destroyed, not coming back. But then you just look at what's in our air and what's in our water and how this geoengineering is terraforming is going on. Like everything that's being done currently is like ramping up, but none of it is helpful for human, like a Homo sapiens sapien. An invading army trying to siege a planet and sicken the population, weaken the population, and starve a population, as they did in the 1200s or 800 AD or 600 AD or 1400 AD, the way you would siege a castle. It's the same exact thing. I think an off-planet or an interdimensional entity is laying siege to this planet. Now, they're trying to wrap it up with these sort of higher level people that are in touch with them. And at least in my opinion, a lot of that seance stuff went back in the 1880s. You can check it out yourself, and not going to go too deep into it here. But everything that is currently being done, in my opinion, is non-human. There's no way you can look at this world with a straight, with a commonsensical analysis and say, wow, everything that's being done is great for humanity. It's the opposite. Everything being done currently is negative toward humanity, negative toward and I would say the physiology of a human being. And now they're removing the very base of civilization itself, the food production. And it's a plan. And everywhere you look across the planet, these farmers are not planting this year. It's too expensive. But we were getting these magnetic field depletion events and the jet streams going out of their natural flows because of magnetic field declines. That was already denting food production anyway, which made me think, did we hit a rollover point where the magnetic field had declined enough where the jet streams were going to be so noticeably out of place that we would get 20% yield losses naturally? And people just question and go, dude, how do we lose 20% of our global crops this year? Nothing happened. But the war starts perhaps in these same years to cover up the crop losses that were happening on a natural multi-thousand-year cycle. That's what I'm looking at. And everybody's playing in complicit. And at the end of this thing, I just do believe to bring in the new financial system, there'll be a lot of pushback against that. They're going to have to support a lot of people, and governments aren't going to want to do that. So, there's an equation in there somewhere. There's just going to be less people around at the end of this. And I could go on, but it's family friendly, YouTube, family friendly. It's just a mind experiment. I really know here. I just little bits of information I keep hearing off these weird people off of all the internet that I'm trying to put together, just weaving a story. It's just a family friendly YouTube channel right here. Adapt 2030.
Yeah. Well, the good news is there's a lot of things that you can do, right? You can still work with your hands, with earth, with sun and water, and produce food. You do not need a military, industrial, governmental complex to feed you, right? In fact, you're going to be way better off without it. There's still the traditional medicines that have been used for thousands of years. Like some of these names, like Melissa officinalis. The reason it's called officinalis, that's the Latin name for this wonderful herb that has all kinds of healing properties, is because it was in the office at the monk's place, 1,000 years ago, right? There's a lot of these other ones that they have this officinalis as their second name, and that's because it was in the officina, which was the office, and that's where the monks kept it, right? But these garlic, the guy Otzi, they found this guy Otzi, 5,000 years old. They found his frozen body up in the Alps somewhere. He had like mushrooms in his pocket, like they were, which are known antibiotics, right? We have so many solutions that we have had for all of our, human history that are still available to us. Garlic is still a way, way better antibiotic than almost all the antibiotics that are sold by the pharmaceutical companies. We have so many solutions and things that we can do. And yeah, it's time to pivot. It really is. I think this is a wonderful time to be alive because I've always been aware through my whole life that something was seriously wrong. I never knew what it was, and I couldn't pinpoint it. My own education was a disaster. I recognize that, man. When I graduated with that engineering degree, I said, that was a huge waste of time. But at least I got a good job, right? And I did get some great training. But I've seen everything I've seen, the food system, the medical system, and the way everything's configured. I was like, wow, this is really, really crazy. But you're trying to get on with life and get married and have kids, and you're trying to have a good life. But now I'm like really grateful, and I was always avoiding the conversations about what might be behind everything. But once you face it and you go, oh, it makes so much sense that there is some group that is managing and coordinating and orchestrating all of this, and it's there's the factions of the China and the U.S. and all that, but they all ultimately report up to a single group. And whether they're human or not, I don't know, but they're definitely anti-human in their intentions.
Would you get angry at a tiger because it eats something? I mean, it is what it is. I mean, there are different realms of frequency, and they exist within different bands they're just a different species within our construct here. So, I mean, do you get mad at a dog because it barks? That's just inherently what it does. So a more aggressive race that wants to control, I mean, you look at it in the greater scheme, yeah, you're affecting me personally, but that's just the way they are. You look at it in this, I'm not saying, hey, that's great that they can do these things, but it's just the way it is. It's just like the law of nature itself is the baseline of whatever species acts the way it does. And if you frame it into that context versus, oh, they're bad, they're this or them or us or whatever, if you understand it's a different species, inhabiting some of the same frequency bands that we do that can kind of jump in and out of that, then it starts to make a lot more sense. Like, perhaps there's a better way to protect yourself against that once you understand what it is, instead of trying to fight some boogeyman there that doesn't really exist.
Yeah. I've noticed with everything that there's always an option.
Oh,
I just went, I was on this trip to Texas. Oh my God, that was so arduous to go get these cavies. And, so people in line at TSA and, they just stand in front of the camera and take the photo. And I was kind of standing off to the side, I hand her my passport. I don't have my real ID. And she goes, okay, take your photo. And I don't want my photo. She goes, okay, just go.
yeah, you can opt out. You can definitely opt out of that. It says right there on the picture, you can opt out.
It does. It's not even a big deal. I said, no, I don't want my photo taken. She goes, okay, just walks on. There's always a way. So yes, we got supply chain problems. You can grow food. You can grow food. Yeah, we got a medical system that is absolutely it's a death cult, right? There's lots of other ways to heal. There's a ton of other modalities. There's a lot of other people who know how to heal or use herbs or homeopathy or all the different other options that we have available. I think I don't know what we're going to do about transportation. They've definitely got a good grip on that, but I believe that'll change. I mean, we're adaptable. There's so much that can be done, right? So I'm very hopeful and optimistic, but the change there's a lot of people who are gonna have a real hard time with the program.
And if you're able to put together some small gauge rail line like we did in the 1830s, and you're able to rip up some old pipes and then form that into gauge line, we can get some tracks laid back down again. Rudimentary. I mean, that's the way we did it before, right? I think we're going to drop back in the past the way we're going to do things again. And if you have these skills to take something that's not usable in our modern form because it just doesn't function anymore because that system's not functional, but there's still like a physical product. Like if you're talking about pipes, metal pipes, if somebody knows how to cut those and then lay them into a road, and then you could move said carriage up and down that like we did in the 1800s, then yeah, that's a skill set in itself. And you would start finding, and it would probably move on the main roads first, then people would come to it like they did before. And that's why all the cities we have going east to west were on the railroad tracks first and grew from there, unless there's a different version of history. But anyway, I digress. It could be, and the stories were given that all the little towns that were along the railroads grew into these large major cities we have now. So it would just do the same thing. You made it lay down a trunk line and people will come to it again. I don't know. Well, David, Marjorie, any last thoughts? I see we've gone over an hour already. See how quickly we can just talk for like hours. We should do a marathon, the Dave and Marjorie marathon.
Well, I really appreciate it. I dip into your stuff all the time because I really especially appreciate your extensive review of the news internationally and what you're bringing that way. And so I think we're going to both jointly promote this on both of our channels. So where would people go to reach out to get in touch with you? What's your best? I know you had Adapt 2030. There's Civilization Cycles. What's your favorite place to send people?
Yeah, Civilization Cycle podcast. If you could please subscribe there. I'm really trying to grow that out so we can share this message, because podcasts are about 30 minutes to 1 hour, and it's a good roundup of exactly what we talked about. So this is going to be a podcast. I'm going to take this out of the video format. I'm going to transition it into just an audio only, so you can listen while you're doing and preparing dinner and then spend your time wisely. That's the greatest thing about podcasts. You can listen to in the background while you're doing other things, and you can get some valuable knowledge out of it.
Do that all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. I really appreciate the longer content for that sort of thing, especially if I'm working or trying to build something or whatever I'm doing. Yeah, no, human generated content. Please support human generated content, everybody out there. That should be a disclaimer on the front of the video. Now, where are we finding you, Marjorie?
So go to backyardfoodproduction.com, and that's the best way to reach me. And I've got I condensed 20 years of figuring out the fastest and easiest ways for the average person who doesn't know anything. Maybe they're older and they're out of shape, how to grow a lot of food in your backyard. And, there's no email sign up. There's nothing. You have controls. You can speed it up or slow it down. Please go look at that. We have got to. This is like the war has not really yet begun in my mind, because humans have not yet really started fighting for humanity. And when that happens, but it's going to be very interesting, but you can't fight a war on an empty stomach. So just go to backyardfoodproduction.com and, we'll find a way to get in touch from there. So, but I'm not doing the whole list building and marketing stuff anymore. I'm kind of done with that. It's like, look, we're at this transition point. I don't think money is going to make a lot of sense here in the future anyway. So I'm not really interested in an online business as much as I used to be, and I just really want to get this out there. So yeah, backyardfoodproduction.com.
Yeah, thank you. And just if you think that this thing is totally smoothed over and we're just going to go back to normal 2 weeks to flatten the curve and we're going back to normal, the disruptions that you haven't even experienced any disruption yet, because that is now working its way through the supply chains. This summer, you're going to start to see what happened just last month appear this summer. It's going to, they're talking 9 months to even just clear the ships out, to get them to where they need to go. Not that they're going to leave that little bit of water, but when they leave there, where are they going to go to? That's going to take, and then when they get there to unload, to finally get to the factories or the facilities or whatever they're going to, the refineries, 9 months just before things start flowing normal again. So just even in that context, you're like, wow, we haven't even felt any real disruption yet. It's just starting to hit. And it is out here in Asia. And I'm telling you, it is starting to hit on this plastics things out here. So get ready, brace for impact on that. But again, find the opportunity in that.